Hello everyone, welcome back to this week's video. This week's video is about the three works of Emily Dickinson. This week you are going to read and analyze the three different poems by Emily Dickinson. The poems are Faith is a Fine Invention, Before I Got My Eyes Put Out, We Grow Accustomed to the Dark. Our lesson resources and objectives are before we start reading and analyzing the three poems, it's important to have some background knowledge about Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson, known for her reclusiveness, rarely left her father's home, though she lived near family and enjoyed visitors. An avid gardener, she was known to garden at night, using the light from a lantern. Her night gardening might have been due to an eye condition that caused her pain and made her eyes sensitive to light till she had surgery to correct it. Most of Dickinson's poems were written for her own use and shared with very few people. Many were first found after her death. The first poem we're gonna look at is Faith is a Fine Invention. Faith is a fine invention for gentlemen who see, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency. Analysis of the poem. The quotation marks around faith suggest that Dickinson may be referring to any commonly accepted belief that people have accepted simply because gentlemen say that it's true. Microscopes might represent an alternative to accepting things based solely on faith. The idea of microscopes suggests examining our beliefs closely under sharp focus. The speaker says that microscopes are prudent in an emergency. An emergency might be a moment when we really need urgent answers, when we can't rely on traditional ideas just because they are comfortable and makes us feel good. So, in this little poem of 16 words, Emily Dickinson seems to be clinging to the side of science and new thinking rather than to religion and convention. However, we should know that as far as her historical and biographical context is concerned, Emily Dickinson was known to be a quite conventionally religious person. In many of her letters, she talks about how much her faith and her religion mean to her. And in other poems, she learns the other way in this religion science debate. And now to the second point. Before I got my eye put out.
My eye put out by Emily Dickinson. Before I got my eye put out, I liked as well to see as other creatures that have eyes and know no other way. But were it told to me today that I might have the sky for mine, I tell you that my heart would split for size of me. The meadows, mine. The mountains, mine. All forests, stintless stars, as much of noon as I could take between my finite eyes, the motions of the dipping birds, the morning's amber road, for mine, to look at when I liked, the news would strike me dead. So safer, guess, with just my soul, upon the window pane, where other creatures put their eyes, incautious of the sun.
The first way of seeing is a literal way. Read literally, the poem is about the loss of an eye. The speaker here discusses seeing in the conventional way that we see with our eyes. The second way of seeing is metaphorical. Read metaphorically, the speaker sees what her soul, with her soul. Here, the speaker discusses seeing as a way of understanding rather than seeing literally with finite eyes. The whole poem seems to revolve around the central conceit of sight and ownership, and how the narrator wishes to have control over the world around her. Key to Emily Dickinson's poems are usually the underlying meaning hidden within fifth stanza, the fifth stanza, which seems to suggest that the narrator wishes to take a step back and watch other creatures put their eyes near the sun instead of doing so herself. This suggests again her desire to have control, as she wishes to be able to control how others feel as well as how she feels. Repetition slows down the speed of the poem, causing the reader to stop and take a breath in between describing the meadows and the mountains, allowing the reader to have a chance to think about what the narrator is trying to say. The deliberate slowing down of the poem helps induce a calm mood. And now, to the third poem. We grow accustomed to the dark.
Comparing texts. We Grow Accustomed to the Dark by Emily Dickinson. We grow accustomed to the dark when light is put away, as when the neighbor holds the lamp to witness her goodbye. A moment we uncertain step for newness of the night, then fit our vision to the dark and meet the road erect. And so of larger darknesses, those evenings of the brain, when not a moon disclose a sign, or star come out within. The bravest grope a little, and sometimes hit a tree, directly in the forehead, but as they learn to see, either the darkness alters, or something in the sight adjusts itself to midnight, and life steps almost straight. Discuss. In these three poems, Dickinson uses sight and darkness as metaphors for other ideas. What ideas does she express about the ways people see and how they learn to see? Discuss your responses with a small group of classmates.
Well, in the first two stanzas, the speaker describes literally what it's like to walk on a dark, unlit road. In the last three stanzas, darkness suggests a lack of understanding or insight. The speaker says that darknesses are evenings of the brain, and therefore readers know she is not speaking about darkness in a literal sense. Okay, students, now let's get down to the core of this week's lesson, which is comparing and contrasting Dickinson's poems. Let's first focus on the mechanics. According to conventional rules, Words within a sentence are usually capitalized only if they are proper nouns. Dickinson, however, often capitalized nouns for emphasis, as in the line, "We grow accustomed to the dark." Dark would ordinarily be followed by a comma rather than a dash. Dickinson frequently uses dashes where conventional rules call for other punctuation, such as commas or periods. Dickinson often capitalized words to call attention to them. Dashes may indicate pause or replace words she has dropped. For example, in "Before I got my eye put out," Dickinson substitutes a dash for the verb are. The meadows mine, the mountains mine. Now, let's compare the three poems in terms of the metaphor used. In "Before I Got My Eye Put Out," Dickinson compares the experience of seeing with an eye put out to the experience of perceiving things with the soul. In "We Grow Accustomed to the Dark," she likens a neighbor's holding up a lamp to our learning to see the road of life. What about in terms of imagery? Humans experience the world through the sense, so imagery based on a common human experience, such as seeing, makes Dickinson's abstract ideas more concrete and understandable. In addition, she probably expects readers to be familiar with symbolic meanings of sight, vision, and blindness. Her choice to explore these meanings help her communicate her ideas effectively. English language learners